1, 2, 3. Sound good? Cool. Okay. All right, everybody, welcome back from lunch. One quick announcement. If you are registered to take the amateur radio exam and you're wondering where that is, it's going to be in the Lockpicking Village / Tamper Evident Village at 6 p.m. If you're not registered and you want to be registered, go to the LayerOne website. There's a link there. Or you can just walk in and we can take your money there. All right. Next talk is going to be cesi0 on Flipper0, annoying Tesla owners since 2021.
Thank you. Welcome to my talk. Again, it's Flipper0, annoying Tesla owners since 2021. I am cesi0, and welcome to LayerOne. So, legal disclaimer, everything that follows is for educational, research, and experimentation purposes only. Don't blame me for any stupid shit that you do. What is the Flipper0? Well, the Flipper0, is the Flipper1 is a portable handheld device that was kickstarted in 2020 as just kind of a general idea, hoping to raise approximately $60,000. But with the support of about 38,000 people, it ended up raising approximately $4.8 million. One of the real key features is its ability to listen on multiple frequencies. It has a bunch of different sensors and antennas, and it is open source. All the code is available, free to modify, and it is also extensible as far as hardware goes. So it's got some GPIO ports that you can utilize in order to make some hardware modifications. And as we can see here, we've kind of got a breakout of the device itself. And so starting from the top, we've got an LCD monochrome display, nice little 1.5-inch low power monochrome display, works in sunlight, has a nice little backlit. It's got a directional pad, up, down, left, and right, and a center button for selecting, navigating through the menus. Also a back button, also helpful. It's got GPIO headers, which allow you to add additional hardware modifications. There are prototype boards and lots of things that the community has done in order to really utilize the features of this device. Excuse me. The next thing it has is an infrared transceiver, so the ability to both transmit and receive on the infrared range. It's also got a sub-1 gigahertz antenna, so essentially everything from the 250 megahertz all the way up to 950. We'll go over the individual frequencies a little bit later. It's got a USB Type-C in order for you to charge and update the firmware, copy files over. It's got the brains of the device are the low power processing unit, which is an STM device. It has a micro SD card slot so that you can save your signals, save any data that you've captured. Also allows you to use it for storing some of your scripts or payloads for uses in some of the other applications. It has a 2,000 milliamp battery, and now I'm not sure if you guys can see that. It says 7 days of battery life, but there have been reports of not using it for up to a month. They also just implemented a new low power mode, which basically puts your device into an even lower power sleep mode if you're not using it. So you've got quite a bit of usage for one charge. You've got your I button pad, and that is on the back here, and that is to interface with I button and that's a type of interface used for a lot of entryways in apartment buildings. And then it's got an RFID board, and that allows it to send and receive on both low frequency and high frequency, NFC and RFID. So all your key fobs for entryways, or your hotel key cards, all that sort of stuff can be read and written. Now, it was created by a collaboration between a hackerspace in Russia and a manufacturing design firm. And they originally came up with the idea that they wanted a sub-gigahertz multi-use device that was portable, that people could use and get for a less expensive price than currently available options. Again, with the popularity of the Kickstarter, they ended up adding more and more sensors. So you've got the NFC, you've got the Bluetooth, and eventually they incorporated as flipper devices incorporated. So what do you do when you get your device? Well, you have the option of unlocking it. You've got a few different firmwares. Now, the official firmware, because of legal reasons, sort of has some region locks as far as frequencies go. It doesn't have the ability to save or send what are called rolling codes or dynamically encrypted codes. You can read them, but you can't send them or replay them. It's also got a factory set device name that kind of shows up everywhere, and so it doesn't allow a whole lot of customization. And so the first thing that people did, because this is open source, is they forked it. And on the top right, we're going to go over the Unleashed firmware. That tends to be one of the more popular one. It was originally called the Code Grabber firmware, and that was because it could actually save the rolling codes that were not allowed to be saved from the official firmware. It's got a highly active community as far as development and contribution through the Discord. I would highly encourage you to check it out. One of the big things is it removes the sub-gigahertz restrictions from your device. So you can send and receive on all the frequencies that the chip is allowed to, that the chip is capable of broadcasting on. And you can even go a little bit further and push it to what's called dangerous mode and push it to literally all the capabilities that the chip can do, regardless of whether it may or may not damage your device. It also has a lot of custom applications. So because the Flipper is open source, people have developed a lot of applications that can assist you with some of your tools, or with some of your use cases. You know, you've got. We'll go over some of the applications a little bit later. It also kind of expanded upon what's called the Flipper system, and in addition to having all the technical capabilities, it has a cute little friendly Flipper dolphin character on your device that gets happier the more signals it receives. And so they've added some custom animations that just kind of make it a little more fun. Also, really, they've added some more capabilities as far as the encoders and decoders for certain signals. And so Unleashed is really kind of the #1 popular firmware. Now, people decided that Unleashed was good, but they could make it better. So, fork upon fork. We've got Roguemaster. Roguemaster is run by, or is mainly developed by a single person who goes by Roguemaster. They run a Patreon account which you can contribute to, which gets you more frequent releases, also gives you access to like the bug tracker so you could submit suggestions. Again, that just kind of expanded upon the Unleashed firmware where it added more applications, different animation set. and some different encoders. And then we've got the Flipper Extreme, which is a fork of Roguemaster. So you can see lots of forks. And the Flipper Extreme is a little more adult-oriented. It's got some not safe for work animations. It also has some of the decoders for more of the advanced security protocols. So if you're interested in really trying to decode those modern security protocols, Flipper Extreme is the way to go. So here's just a small list of the applications. These are actually the applications that are included on the Unleashed firmware. And you can see there are things from Doom to UART Viewer, Hex Viewer, and then through the GPIO, you can actually control, other devices. So there are things like ESP32, controlling, utilizing the ESP Wi-Fi chip to effectively launch your Wi-Fi attacks. You've got the ability to control the NRF24 chip, which allows you to do your 2.4 gigahertz mouse jacking attacks. Lots of different options. One of my favorite that we'll go over in a little bit is the RFID fuzzer. And again, all open source. Feel free to contribute if you know how to. And so I guess the question is, how I know about these firmware. How do I get it? What do I do? There are a few different options. One of them is the QFlipper app, and that is for your desktop, Mac, PC. And this is how it looks. You plug in your device, you get the name of your device up here, you get some information about the hardware that it's running, the last build, or the build date for your firmware, and then a big install button for the current release. Over on the top right, you can actually configure, if you want to work on the development or the release candidate update channel, you can select those. Again, these are from the official repo, but if you select install from file, you can then select the tar file, the archive for the official firmware, so that you can install the custom firmware. Another really nice feature is the ability to essentially remote control. Now, granted, it needs to be plugged into your computer, but if you click on the little flipper icon, you get this nice little pop-out, which gives you your control pad and your back, and you can actually control your actual flipper device from your computer. And this actually made it really easy to make these screenshots. Another option for installing or updating your firmware is through the mobile app. And there are some things that the desktop app can do that the mobile app can't, and vice versa. In this case, the mobile app does not allow you to install custom firmware. So you can install and update the official releases, but not your custom. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to browse through your archive of saved signals. Now, one thing you do want to note is it only works on the root folder. So I've got probably 15,000 different signals on my device right now, and you can only see the ones that are in the root. The other nice thing that they have is the ability to look at your apps. Now, again, the mobile device is kind of in its infancy, so at the time of writing this, all the apps showed up as Snake Game, so I wouldn't necessarily rely on that, but a really effective tool that actually you need to use a separate device besides your flipper for is the NFC attack. So this is a brute force against MIFARE classic keys. And essentially what you do is you walk up to the reader, you emulate a MyFair device, and it will send back certain codes, which you can then decode using this tool. Another really nice feature that I utilize a lot is the file manager and editor. And so with the desktop app, you can, of course, upload and download files. But with the mobile app, you can actually edit them on the go. And so this is really helpful if you're out on an engagement, you realize, hey, the payload that I tested on my system doesn't work on this other system. Let me quickly edit it, and it'll upload it back into your Flipper device. You can browse through the internal file system as well as the SD card, so you can modify any of the files that you might need to. The next thing, which has actually become a lot more popular and was not released when the Flipper came out, is called Flipper Labs. And this is a website that utilizes web USB in order to interface with your device. And this allows you to, again, view the information, install firmware, install your custom firmware, and one of the reasons why it's become a little more popular is because installing a custom firmware is as easy as one click. So it's literally one URL that will take you to the lab page, and you just click install. It'll install to your device, and you can go in a matter of minutes. Some of the features that you've got on the Flipper Labs are the file manager, file browser. You've got the CLI. You've got the NFC tool attack. You've got a paint, which is kind of just like a fun thing. It doesn't really stay on your system. It's just kind of a drawing board. And then some more radio tools. So, as we can see on the top left, we've got the file manager. And so you can upload a file, or you can upload an entire folder, which is really useful if you want to check out an entire repository, which we'll go over later, and upload them to your device. On the bottom left, you can see the MF key attack. And basically, as I said, you go up to the reader, you hit detect reader, it will then run the attack, and then you go to either your cell phone or your computer, and you give it the keys, or you ask it to give you the keys, which will then be uploaded to your dictionary file so you can use them to unlock your NFC cards. And then over on the right here, we've got the Flipper CLI, which just gives you a little bit more flexibility as far as interfacing with the device. If you want to set, certain settings an exact way for a one-off, the CLI is the way to go. So I've got the device. What can I do with it? We'll go over a few different things. One of the things you can do with it is perform bad USB attacks. Now, if you're not familiar with bad USB, it is emulating a human interface device, so mouse, keyboard, and often is utilized for keystroke injection, rapidly typing keys so that you can do it basically in human rate in an automated fashion. It was popularized, I guess, by the Rubber Ducky from Hack5. So you can see on the top right, that's what theirs looked like. It was a simple microcontroller with a micro USB storage device that looks just like a generic USB device that you plug in, and it will run the payload that's on the micro SD card. They've made some iterations to it. Down on the right, they've got the USB-C version, expanded storage, and another popular tool that's utilizing the bad USB is the WHI injector, or the WHI Elite by Luca Bongiorni. And these are pretty cool because these take the bad USB attacks wireless. The WHI injector, WHID injector, creates an access point that you can connect to using any device, and you can send the keystrokes using that access point to your target system. The WHI Elite takes that even a step further and adds 3G, 4G capability. So you can control or inject keystrokes from anywhere in the world, essentially, if it's got cell signal. Now, for the Flipper Zero, I personally like to use it on engagements to bring in my shells. So instead of having to carry around a whole bunch of different USB payloads, USB devices with different payloads for whatever systems I'm trying to get into, I can simply go to my Flipper, select the appropriate payload, and run it from there. And so it really gives you a lot of freedom to bring whatever you need without necessarily having to prepare as well as you could. One of the really nice things you can also do is emulate specific hardware types. And so in this case, we've got the ID for Apple keyboards. Apparently, over the last few years, Apple has tried to thwart bad USB devices by going through essentially a pairing mode for unknown keyboards. And so if you plug in a keyboard that it hasn't seen before, it says, are you sure you want to register this? And you go through a whole setup. If you put this string in the first line of your bad USB file, it will pretend to be an Apple keyboard, and you will not need to go through that whole setup. Another nice thing that I've seen is the kiosk escapes. So you've got anything that exposes a USB port. You've got these photo printer albums. You've got these digital displays that allow you to charge your phone. A lot of them do actually accept HID inputs. And one thing that people are starting to explore is actually utilizing bad USB against mobile devices as well. So what I've seen so far is a brute force pin cracker. Now, it doesn't work so well because of lockout features, but for those devices that do not have locking set up appropriately, it does work. Creating new contacts, forwarding the entire email inbox to another number, all sorts of stuff. Really, basically anything you can do with a keyboard and mouse, you're able to do using the Flipper Zero and bad USB. Next thing that I like to utilize my Flipper Zero for is infrared. Now, I don't know if you guys have the amount of remotes that I do in my house, where I've got one for my stereo, I've got one for my TV, my AC has one. Apparently, these new vacuums come with one. We've got digital displays, LED lights, digital photo frames, teleconferencing systems, even digital whiteboards, all controlled via infrared. And that means potentially controllable through your Flipper Zero. Now, we'll go into a little bit of history. The device I'm showing here is called a TV Begone. Now, someone realized that, or his name is Mitch Altman, realized that he could essentially program a mini computer to send out the signals for on-off for all the TVs that were available at the time. And so basically, over the course of 60 to 90 seconds, you press this button, and it will cycle through all the different infrared codes for on and off for for a majority of the TVs. And this caused a little bit of havoc at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2008, where a Gizmodo reporter got his hands on one of these and decided to see how many devices were vulnerable. Well, needless to say, he affected more than half of the devices that were in the Consumer Electronics Show and was subsequently banned for life. So do what you will with this information. One of the nice things that you can do with the Flipper Zero is the ability to capture these infrared signals. And so it's a really simple process. You go to the infrared app on the Flipper, you tell it you want to learn a new remote, and it says, point the remote at me. And so on the top has a little infrared, this is where the infrared transceiver is, and once you press the button, it will report what it found, and this is actually turning off my my tower fan that I got from Costco. And what you can do from there is you can replay the signal, or you can save it and actually create essentially a custom remote for these devices. Let's see if this works. Oh, okay. Videos are fun. Hopefully you can see this. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the database of signals that I have stored on my device, and we're going to simply replay one. So we go down to Save Remotes. I'm going to go down to the IR database, and you can see just some options of devices that are available. We'll go to Digital Science to see what we can do with a sharp signage. And apologies for the turned for the rotation, but this is how the Flipper this is what the Flipper actually does. So it wants you to essentially hold it like a remote. And so you can see you've got power input, basically all of the options that you would have on the remote you have here. You can also take these captured signals and modify the values. We saw the file manager earlier. These are simply stored in text files. And so you can modify the values and potentially find things that maybe aren't on the default remote, but you might have access to. So the next thing, sub-gigahertz. And this is kind of a big reason why a lot of people get the Flipper is for really interfacing with these sub-gigahertz frequencies. And by default, or I guess through Unleashed, you get access to the frequencies on the top. So essentially 300 to 928. But if you go into danger mode, which I referred to earlier, really unlocks the capabilities of your device, it will allow you to broadcast and receive in all of those frequencies listed below. And with, again, like infrared, sub-gigahertz is used everywhere. Some of the more familiar uses you may be familiar with are car remotes, your key fobs, your garage door opener, but you may not know that all new cars are coming with the tire pressure monitoring systems that are also remote, and those operate within the sub-gigahertz spectrum. Also, another thing is the smart power meters, and there are actually some demos that I've seen of being able to remotely power off the main breaker through the usage of the smart meter. And so we're like, okay, that's nice. How do I do it? Some of the things that have made sniffing and sending and receiving really easy is the frequency analyzer. And that basically listens on the frequencies that you have enabled and tells you whether it's what it's heard. You can adjust the sensitivity. So if you move it down to the left, it will be essentially more sensitive. It will listen to signals further away versus signals that are closer if you move it to the positive side. And so in this case, I was messing around with my remote control for their LED lights, and they happen to be RF wireless. And I was just going through and pressing all the buttons, seeing what would show up. Apparently, it operates on the 434 and 433 ranges, and you can see it's got an X3 it detected three symbols, or three signals. It's happened multiple times. And then while I was sniffing, something else just popped up. But from here, what you do is you can simply press the center button, and it'll bring you over to the scanning window, and it will select the frequency that you just selected, and it will try to scan. Now you've got a few different options here. If you don't see your signal, it could be because your modulation's not correct, or because it's not a decodable signal. So there's some things that you might want to mess around with there. But in this case, we were able to see the signal from my LED remote. And if we go into the information, we can actually see the key and some more information that honestly I don't really care about because I don't know. So basically I then I then save that, so then I can create and replay that signal without the use of the remote. Another really nice thing that I like to utilize is what I call bunny mode. And it's got a hopping mode in the scanner, which will hop between all the frequencies that you've got defined within your configuration file. Now, because this is open source and very extensible, you've got a lot of access to your config files. So in this case, you can simply add or remove frequencies from the hopping section, and it will add that. Now, one of the key differences between the frequency analyzer and this hopping for bunny mode is that the frequency analyzer won't grab the signals. It will just tell you, hey, I heard something here. But the bunny mode will actually grab the signal, granted it's listening to the frequency at that time. So that's also one of the things you want to take into account, is you don't want to list all the frequencies ever in your hopping file, because then you're going to miss some signals. So what happens if you can't decode it? Well, that's when you want to look at raw mode. And there are two different options for raw modes. One is called bin raw, and that is in the scanning mode. And what that'll do is it will save signals regardless of whether it can decode them or not. So it'll just grab the raw data, save them as bin raw, and then you can look at the data yourself and try to piece it together. Sometimes you can send these pieces and they'll work as replay attacks. Other times they're just bits and pieces of a larger signal. The other thing that you can use to read raw signals is actually called the read raw. And that acts as essentially a tape recorder. So you set the frequency, you set the modulation, and you press record. And as you can see on the bottom right, it will spike when it detects a signal, and then you click stop, and essentially you've recorded your signal so that you can save or send. And this is the way that a lot of attacks are being performed against the security protocols, so the rolling the rolling codes, and the Tesla codes. So this is where kind of the name of my talk came from. Is people discovered that the Tesla charge port, apparently when you pull up to a Tesla charger and you initiate the charging session, it sends out a signal to the Tesla device to open up the charge port so that you don't have to do it yourself. And this was discovered that there's no encryption and it is easily able to be repeated. And so if you simply go to your stored signal, you can see on the top left, essentially it gives you the information, where frequency it's on, the modulation, and what type. So in this case, it's raw. And once you click send, you get the nice little wave symbol, and your Tesla charge port opens up. Or if you're at a dealership, all the Tesla charger ports open up. Now down here, we've got a GIF going for a replay of actually a sex toy. It was discovered that there are numerous sex toys on the market that are remotely controlled without any authentication. And so those signals have been captured thanks to the community, posted online, and it just happened to be one that I thought would be interesting to grab when I first got my device. I walk around and press it and see if anything happens. Another thing that you can effectively use your flipper for is the Open Sesame attack. And this has been popularized on a few different platforms. And basically, using math, you can significantly reduce what's called the key space of the codes that you're trying to brute force. So essentially, if you look at the middle picture, instead of having to type out each individual code that's listed here, if you try the top code, the system will try to piece those parts together, and essentially you're trying all of those codes with a reduced number of inputs. And so this translates into brute forcing garage doors. And your mileage may vary. Some of the garage doors have implemented new security 2+ features, but this does work on some of the older ones. And essentially, you can brute force the entire key space within 3 minutes. And so on the top right, essentially we give a little breakdown of the most efficient way to do that. And basically, you start with the first 1,000, and if you don't hit that, and that takes about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, then you go to the second 1,000, and so there's essentially 4,000 different keys that you can choose. And so within the course of 4.5 minutes, you can brute force the entire key space. And you can do this all using the Flipper 0. We'll get into where you can get some of these files a little bit later. One of the things that I have gotten asked is, can this jam? And the answer is yes. Yes, it can. However, you shouldn't. For legal reasons, I would say you should probably not jam things. The files actually have been removed from the official repositories due to malfeasance. But if you are interested in them, you can find them. I accidentally found them. And if you're interested in more, you can talk to me later about them. Everything's got a purpose. So, for me, these files can be used for legitimate security research purposes. The next thing we're going to go over is NFC. And so this is essentially reading a hotel key card. Don't worry, it's not this hotel, but I am working on that, don't worry. And what this is actually, this is a hotel downtown. And I was able to scan the key card. And because it had a default or a standard password of 8 Fs, I am actually able to save and emulate this device. And so this key card is now stored on my device. And it was as simple as going to the NFC application and tapping the back. Now, you won't necessarily get this lucky all the time. And so there are some additional actions that you can perform. One of them is brute forcing the key sectors to actually unlock the key itself. So basically if you have the key to unlock the sector, you can then duplicate the sectors and replay them. And so on the top left, what you're seeing is the dictionary attack running. So the custom firmware, through the custom firmwares, they've released a set of dictionary files. And so they include common keys that have been uploaded by the community. And so it goes through and tests those. The other option that I alluded to earlier is the MF key attack. And that is on the top right. And that essentially emulates an MF key to try to get the reader to send the additional keys to you so that you can unlock even more sectors on the card. If you have been successful in unlocking or reading all the sectors, you can then emulate it. It also has the ability to write, but currently, at least on Unleashed, it can only write MyFair 11 cards. So that there are some restrictions there. But then you've also got the ability to read specific card types. You can edit your dictionary for the MyFair Classic keys, and you could also unlock NTAG and ultralight keys. Another utilization of the Flipper Zero is the RFID. And in one of my engagements, I was able to find a HID card, an RFID card, for the parking lot for the sheriff's office. And I was able to quickly, without removing the original card, make a duplicate. And so you can see here how quickly it went. And so basically within less than a minute, we can copy an additional card to freeze. I did freeze. That's fine. So yeah, you go into the RFID section, and I've already saved it, so we're just going to go to saved. We go to sheriff, which is the name of the card, and then we can either emulate it or we can, in this case, write it, and now we've got a duplicate key. Another really nice thing that I've utilized is the RFID fuzzer, and this is a custom application that was, well, I guess, the application developed by the community. And what this does is it allows you to brute force the values on the RFID card. And so it's got a few different options for your types. And so in this case, I was able to grab another card from another engagement. And here, basically, I'm selecting the value, and it is essentially brute forcing the values so that I can attempt to see whether there are other values that might give me enhanced access. So one use for this is if you've gotten essentially privilege escalation. So you've managed to get, I don't know, a janitor's key card, and you want to get into the server room. Well, the administrator only has access to that. So maybe if you increment the numbers on the key card, you might be able to essentially emulate the other key card. And then we've got hardware expansion. So the GPIO is shown here, and essentially you've got the ability to break out your board to add additional accessories. On the top right, we've got just a standard proto board, and then on the bottom right, we've got the Wi-Fi module, which allows remote debugging over Wi-Fi. But the community has pushed this even further. And so real quick, we'll go over on the left, we've got kind of a multi-device. It's got an ESP32, so got your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi. It's also got a 2 megapixel camera. It's got another external antenna connector and a flashlight LED. Essentially, this is just a nice system on chip. You've also got the NF24 chip, which allows you to launch your mouse jacking attacks. And you've got even more pins for other devices. On the right side, we've got an IR booster. And this takes the IR capabilities that the Flipper has to a whole another level. This can actually, you can set this to particular frequencies. So if you're interested in, 14 hertz, you can set that and maybe control some devices that way. In the middle, actually on the bottom, is a booster antenna. So the sub-gigahertz range is about 100 meters, give or take, without any obstacles. This pushes it much, much further. And then something interesting that I found is on the top, this is a Game Boy connector. And someone made an application that allows you to trade Pokemon. And basically what you do is you build this device, you plug it into the GPIO ports on your Flipper, you open up the application, you select which Pokemon you want to trade, and then you open up your game and you trade with yourself so you can get any Pokemon regardless of what version you're on. So lots of options as far as what you can do. If you can code it, you can do it. These are some places that I recommend you start. They're public repositories. They're all on GitHub. cesi0, probably mispronounced that. It contains a whole bunch. That's where the majority of the sub-gigahertz signals are stored. That's where you can find custom applications. You can find custom animations. You can find documentation that will help you develop applications. Definitely recommend you check it out there. And that is run by someone who is highly active in the community, which we'll go over in a little bit. The next thing is the IR database, and that is a database of infrared signals. And so I guess over the years, there have been a few different sources for infrared signals, and they the community has converted these signals into the Flipper capable format so that you can copy them and use them. The third one is I am Jacoby's bad USB repository. He is the #1 contributor to Hack5 rubber ducky scripts, and he also converts them to Flipper. So all your bad USB stuff can be found there. He includes some nice ones that actually allow you to forward your stuff to Discord using webhooks. And as you can see, the Uber Guido 0 is 1.5 gigabytes. The IRDB is about 10 megs. And the I am Jacoby is about 1.5 meg. And if you're interested in any of this, even if you're not, I just recommend you checking out some of the links here. The community is highly active, a lot of smart people, a lot of active development. So we've got the GitHub for the Unleashed firmware and their Discord. And all these QR codes are 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left. It's the same links. The third link is the Roadmaster GitHub repo and their Discord. And then I also recommend you checking out the RF Hacker Sanctuary. They actually run the wireless CTF at DEF CON, and they do a whole bunch of wireless stuff, RFID stuff. And if you're also interested in any of this, I recommend you checking out Null Space Labs. We're a hackerspace here in Los Angeles. If you want more information, we've got a booth outside. We do lots of hacking projects and monthly lockpick meetups and all sorts of LayerOne fun stuff. And I think with that, that is the end of my talk. If you've got any questions, I'll be outside.